Latium is the region of central western Italy in which the city of Rome was founded and grew to be the capital city of the Roman Empire. Latium was originally a small triangle of fertile, volcanic soil on which resided the tribe of the Latians. It was located on the left bank of the Tiber River, extending northward to the Anio River and southeastward to the Pomptina Palus as far south as the Circeian promontory. The right bank of the Tiber was occupied by the Etruscan city of Veii, and the other borders were occupied by Italic tribes. Subsequently Rome defeated Veii and then its Italic neighbors, expanding Latium to the Apennine Mountains in the northeast and to the opposite end of the marsh in the southeast. The modern descendant, the Italian region of Lazio, also called Latium in Latin and occasionally in modern English, is somewhat larger still, but not as much as double the original Latium. The ancient language of the Latins, the tribesmen who occupied Latium, was to become the immediate predecessor of the Old Latin language, ancestor of Latin and the Romance languages. Latium has played an important role in history owing to its status as the host of the capital city of Rome, at one time the cultural and political center of the Roman Empire. Consequently, Latium is home to celebrated works of art and architecture. Geography. Earliest known Latium was the country of the Latini, a tribe whose recognized center was a large, extinct volcano, Mons Albanus, 20 kilometers to the southeast of Rome, 64 kilometers in circumference. In its center is a crater lake, Lacus Albanus, oval in shape, a few km long and wide. At the top of the second highest peak was a temple to Jupiter Latius, where the Latini held state functions before the subjection to Rome, and the Romans subsequently held religious and state ceremonies. The last pagan temple to be built stood until the Middle Ages, when its stone and location were reused for various monasteries and finally a hotel. During World War II, the Wehrmacht turned it into a radio station, which was captured after an infantry battle by American troops in 1944, and it currently is a controversial telecommunications station surrounded by antennae considered unsightly by the population within view. The selection of Jupiter as a state god and the descent of the name Latini to the name of the Latin language are sufficient to identify the Latins as a tribe of Indo-European descent. Virgil, a major poet of the early Roman Empire under Augustus, derived Latium from the word for hidden, because in a myth Saturn, ruler of the Golden Age in Latium, hid from Jupiter there. A major modern etymology is that Lazio comes from the Latin word latis, meaning wide, expressing the idea of flat land, meaning the Roman Campania. History. The region that would become Latium had been home to settled agricultural populations since the early Bronze Age and was known to the ancient Greeks, and even earlier to the Mycenaean Greeks. The name is most likely derived from the Latin word latis, meaning wide, expressing the idea of flat land, but the name may originate from an earlier, non-Indo-European one. The Etruscans, from the home region of Etruria, exerted a strong cultural and political influence on Latium from about the 8th century BC onward. However, they were unable to assert political hegemony over the region, which was controlled by small, autonomous city-states in a manner roughly analogous to the state of affairs that prevailed in ancient Greece. Indeed, the region's cultural and geographic proximity to the cities of Magna Graecia had a strong impact upon its early history. By the 10th century BC, archaeology records a slow development in agriculture from the entire area of Latium with the establishment of numerous villages. The Latins cultivated grains, grapes, olives, apples, and fig trees. The various Latini populi lived in a society led by influential clans. These clans were a sign of the tribal origin, which continued in Rome as the 30 Curii which organized Roman society. However, as a social unit, the gens was replaced by the family, which was headed by the paterfamilias, the oldest male, who held supreme authority over the family. A fixed local center seemed necessary, as the center of the region cannot have been one of the villages, but must have been a place of common assembly, containing the seat of justice and the common sanctuary of the district, where members of the clans met for purposes of administration and amusement, and where they obtained a safer shelter for themselves in case of war. In ordinary circumstances, such a place was not at all but scantily inhabited. Such a place was called in Italy height or stronghold. It was not a town at first, but it became the nucleus of one, as houses naturally gathered around the stronghold and were afterwards surrounded with the ring. The isolated Alban range, that natural stronghold of Latium, which offered to settlers a secure position, would doubtless be first occupied by the newcomers. Here, along the narrow plateau above Palazzuola, between the Alban Lake and the Alban Mound, extended the town of Alba Longa, which was regarded as the primitive seat of the Latin stock, and the mother city of Rome, as well as of all the other old Latin communities. Here on the slopes lay the very ancient Latin districts of Lanuvium, Aricia, and Tusculum. Here are found some primitive works of masonry, which usually mark the beginnings of civilization. The district strongholds that later gave rise to the considerable towns of Tiber and Praenest, Labici II, Gabii, Nomentum in the plain between the Albone and Sabine hills and the Tiber, Rome on the Tiber, Laurentum and Lavinium on the coast, were or more or less ancient centers of Latin colonization, not to speak of many other less famous and in some cases almost forgotten Latin League. All these villages were politically sovereign, and each of them were self-governing. The closeness of descent and the common language not only pervaded in all of them, but manifested itself in an important religious and political institution, the Latin League. The Latins were tied together by religious associations, including worship of Venus, Jupiter Latiaris, and of Diana at the Lake of Aricia. So, by virtue of her proximity to the sanctuary of Jupiter, the village of Alba Longa held a position of religious primacy among the Latin villages. The villages originally entitled to participate in the league were 30 in total, and they are called the 30 Alban colonies, but the names are not all recorded. The ritual of this league was the Latin festival, at which, on the Mount of Alba, upon a day annually appointed by the chief magistrate for the purpose, an ox was sacrificed by the assembled Latin stock to the Latin god. Each community taking part in the ceremony had to contribute to the sacrificial feast. However, the sacred grove of Aricia, the Nemus Diani, on the lake of Aricia, was always among the most popular place of pilgrimage for the Latins. Although Alba Longa enjoyed a position of religious primacy, the Alban presidency never held any significant political power over Latium, e.g., it was never the capital of a Latin state. It is probable that the extent of the Latin League's jurisdiction were somewhat unsettled and thus fluctuated, yet it remained for its existence not an accidental aggregate of various communities, but the positive expression of the relationship of the Latin stock. The Latin League may not have at all times included all Latin communities, but it never granted the privilege of membership to any that were not Latin. Very early in its existence, Rome acquired the presidency of the League, and Alba Longa appeared as a rival for which it was destroyed in the mid-7th century BC. The League as it was had been dissolved, and the foremost families were compelled to move to Rome. Alba Longa, the mother city, was dissolved into Rome, the daughter. According to Livy, Alba Longa was razed to the ground, spare the temples by King Tullus of Rome. The Latin festival would still be held on the Alban Mound, but by Roman magistrates. Roman hegemony having destroyed Alba Longa, Rome was in command of the Latin festival and thus held presidency over the Latin peoples. By the mid-7th century BC, Rome had secured itself as a maritime power and secured its salt supply. The Via Salaria was paved from Rome down to Ostia on the northern bank of the river Tiber, the closest salt field in western Italy. At the same time, archaeologists detect an urban transformation of Rome. Roman huts were being replaced by houses, and there was a social space, or forum, that was built by c. 620 BC. The influence of the Etruscans played an important role. Migrants came from Etruscan towns. Soon it was followed by the rule of Etruscan kings, the Tarquins. While Rome may have acquired considerable territory in Latium, her kings never exercised absolute power over Latium. The Latin cities did, however, look to Rome for protection, for Rome had more manpower than any other city in Latium. This was due to a generous policy of asylum. Roman kindness was unique in its readiness to grant citizenship to outsiders. In fact, citizenship was even granted to former slaves. The children of freedmen provided an important source for Roman armies and would have given them a definite edge in manpower over other cities of the time. Roman Republic. And after the Emperor Augustus officially united all of present-day Italy into a single geopolitical entity, Italia, dividing it into 11 regions. Latium, together with the present region of Campania immediately to the southeast of Latium and the seat of Naples, became Region 1. After the Gothic War A.D. and the Roman conquest, this region regained its freedom, because the Roman Duchy became the property of the Eastern Emperor. However, the long wars against the barbarian Longobards weakened the region, which was seized by the Roman bishop who already had several properties in those territories. The strengthening of the religious and ecclesiastical aristocracy led to continuous power struggles between lords and the Roman bishop until the middle of the 16th century. Innocent III tried to strengthen his own territorial power, wishing to assert his authority in the provincial administrations of Tuscia, Campania and Maritima through the Church's representatives, in order to reduce the power of the Colonna family. Other popes tried to do the same. During the period when the papacy resided in Avignon, France, the feudal lord's power increased due to the absence of the pope from Rome. Small communes, and Rome above all, opposed the lord's increasing power, and with Cola di Rienzo, they tried to present themselves as antagonists of the ecclesiastical power. However, between 1353 and 1367, the papacy regained control of Latium and the rest of the Papal States. For the middle of the 16th century, the papacy politically unified Latium with the Papal States, so that these territories became provincial administrations of St. Peter's of State, governors in Viterbo, in Maritima and Campania, and in Frosinone administered them for the papacy. After the short-lived Roman Republic, the region's annexation to France by Napoleon Bonaparte in February 1798, Latium became again part of the Papal States in October 1799. On the 20th of September 1870, the capture of Rome, during the reign of Pope Pius IX and France's defeat at Sedan, completed Italian unification, and Latium was incorporated into the Kingdom of Italy. Modern region of Latium. Latium, often referred to by the Italian name Lazio, is a government region, one of the first-level administrative divisions of the state. There are 20 regions in Italy, originally meant as administrative districts of the central state. The regions acquired a significant level of autonomy following a constitutional reform in 2001. The modern region of Latium contains the national capital Rome. Bibliography. Bevan, William Latham, Smith, William. The Student's Manual of Ancient Geography. London, J. Murray. Strabo, Geographica Book V. Chapter 3 Rome 20 BC. Athanasius Kircher, Latium 1669 Amsterdam 1671. Gr. Volpi, Vetus Latium Profanum Sacrum, Rome 1742. T. J. Cornell, The Beginnings of Rome, Italy and Rome from the Bronze Age to the Punic Wars, London 1995. C. H. Smith, Early Roman Latium, Economy and Society, c. 1000 to 500 BC, Oxford Classical Monographs, Oxford 1996. Theodore Mommsen, The History of Rome Volume 1, 1894. This article incorporates text from this source, which is in the public domain. Fox, Robin Lane, The Classical World, An Epic History from Homer to Hadrian. Basic Books, 2006.